Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting now. We have an introduction, a welcoming by Chibi Taiko, Taiko drum. And then formally we'll begin the ceremonies at 10:40, but we're beginning right now with the Taiko. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests. And thank you to Chibi Taiko, represented by Shinobu Honma and Tai Anderson. Thank you so much. My name is David Iwasa, and it's my pleasure and honor to be your moderator. And to welcome you, I welcome you to this year's Remembrance Day ceremony at the Japanese-Canadian War Memorial in Stanley Park. Iwasa Davido と申します。今年の式典の司会役をさせていただきます。2022 is the 80th anniversary of the forced removal and internment of Japanese Canadians in 1942. Notably, this year, we received an apology and redress from the British Columbia government for the pain and harm inflicted on Japanese Canadians at the time. While only symbolic, nonetheless, the redress will enhance the Japanese Canadian community with cultural and community initiatives, survivors' health and wellness programs, heritage projects, a monument, and anti-racism initiatives. Nonetheless, most importantly, we're gathered to remember the Canadians of Japanese ancestry who have served honorably and with distinction in all of the major conflicts in which Canada's armed forces have been involved since the First World War. We honor all those who have served, and in particular, those who paid the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of Canada. Japanese Canadians have worked hard and have been willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice in order to receive all of the same rights and privileges accorded to all Canadians. And now I would like to ask Mr. Kevin Takahide Lee to lead everyone in singing O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Kevin. Regarding our honored guests, I will at this time only note those representing our veterans and our national representatives. If you're here, please just raise your hand just so that people can see you. Representing the British Empire Service League Legion Number 9, Ms. Megan Becker, granddaughter of Masumi Mitsui, MM, Military Medal, veteran of the First World War. Okay. S20 in the Nisei Veterans Association, Mike Yamauchi, grandson of Peter Shoji Yamauchi, veteran of the Second World War. Okay. Representing the Government of Canada, Quinn Rink. There you go. Yes. Assistant to the Member of Parliament for Vancouver Centre, the Honourable Dr. Hetty Fry. Representing the Government of British Columbia, Spencer Chandler Herbert, MLA for West End Cold Harbour. And the Consul General of Japan, Consul General Kohei Mariyama. and the National Association of Japanese Canadians past president Lorraine Oikawa, and the Nikkei National Museum and Cultural Center executive director Kara Goshimon Foster. There you go. I'd also like to ask you to take note of the inside page of today's program guide, where there's a small correction required. I should have told Linda this. And I should have noticed it earlier myself. In the paragraph which asks if you knew that there were 32 Japanese Canadians who enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces, not before Canada entered the Second World War, but rather after the beginning of the Second World War against Germany in September 1939 and prior to Canada declaring war on Imperial Japan in December 1941. This is notable because Japanese Canadians living in British Columbia were, for the most part, for racist reasons, prohibited from enlisting in the Canadian Armed Forces because they were of Japanese ancestry. Interestingly, this was not the case outside of British Columbia. And one of the 32 who enlisted was my father, Toru Iwasa, who joined in early 1941 in Raymond, Alberta. You may be puzzled also why it is highlighted that only 3 men enlisted in remote areas of British Columbia. What should have been emphasized is that only 3 men were able to enlist, even though the enlistment of men of Japanese ancestry had been prohibited only in BC. It appears the memo prohibiting such enlistments didn't get to Smithers, Prince Rupert, or Victoria even. You should be aware that many other Japanese Canadians in British Columbia tried to enlist, but were refused. And in addition, you should know that the few Japanese Canadians who were in the Canadian forces after Canada declared war in Japan continued to serve faithfully and with diligence, while many of their friends and family members living in BC at that time were being uprooted from their homes and exiled to interior internment camps, brutal work camps carving highways through the BC mountains, or to sugar beet fields, farms in Alberta and Manitoba. And it wasn't until near the end of the Second World War when British and Australian armies were desperately searching for individuals who could help translate or interpret Japanese that the Canadian government was shamed into permitting the recruitment of Japanese Canadians into the Canadian Army. In the end, despite all of the restrictions and all of the injustices, over 170 Japanese Canadians enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces during the Second World War. I would now like to ask Reverend Tatsuya Aoki of the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temple for reflections and prayer.
reflections, those who have been born first guide those who come later, and those who were born later join those who were born before. This is so that the boundless ocean of birth and death be exhausted. Collected works of Sinran, quotation from Master Tao Chou. Today, we mark Remembrance Day in Canada. I want to respect that as the focus of today because it is truly important, and those who have served and those who have given their lives for Canada deserve to be remembered. The most fundamental teaching of Buddhism that we cannot help but contemplate when we gather in times like today is a teaching of impermanence. The truth of change reminds us to open our eyes and see that in life everything is constantly changing, that nothing remains forever. It is only in living with this awareness of life's impermanence that we can begin to live with clarity of seeing how precious and fragile life can be. And knowing this, to try to live each moment, not taking for granted all that we have. Yet, too often, too easily, we lose sight of what is truly of value. We take for granted our health, that simple, everyday sense of physical well-being that allows us to wake up in this morning, stretch our arms, fill our lungs with air, and gather where we are today. And with each loss and every Remembrance Day ceremony here at the Stanley Park, we are made to realize again that we must try to live, not taking for granted the wonder of life we are able to live each day, each moment. We will continue to remember those Japanese Canadians who have lost their lives in the war, so that they are able to continue to live in our hearts and continue to be a part of our life. This is how Buddhists interpret Remembrance Day.
With this, I would like to ask Bombardier Couturier to sound the last post. We ask everyone to join us in a 2-minute period of silence. We'd ask Piper Edward McElwain to now pipe the lament. Thank you, Piper McElwain and Bugler Bombardier Couturier. I should also note that we have the mounted police from the Vancouver Police Department in attendance and joining us. They've done this for every year as long as I can remember, and we appreciate their presence at this time. Eileen Kitamura will now recite In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies grow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Megan Becker will now recite the Act of Remembrance.
The Act of Remembrance. They shall grow not old, as we that have left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
I've now been asked on behalf of Dr. Hitty Fry, Member of Parliament for Vancouver Centre, to share some remarks. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coast Salish peoples, veterans, friends. I am sorry I could not join you here today at the Japanese War Memorial as we gather to remember the Japanese Canadians who so selflessly gave their lives for this nation during a war and at a time when they were so shamelessly treated as enemy aliens, though being born in this country. It is a tribute to their loyalty and self-sacrifice. We are forever grateful to them. Today we honor the memory of those 227 Japanese Canadian soldiers who served and those who continue to serve. To those who returned, maimed in body and in spirit, and to those who never returned and who lie in an unknown land. They sacrificed for freedom, democracy, and the ever-elusive peace. Today, as we remember them, let us be aware that those values they fought for are once again under attack, globally by anti-democratic, extreme nationalist, and fascist ideologies. Let us commit to fighting for the freedoms for which they so unselfishly fought. Let us pick up their torch, lest we forget. The Honourable Hitty Fry, MP, Vancouver Centre. Could Spencer Chandler Herbert, member of the Legislative Assembly for Vancouver West End, Cole Harbour, share some remarks?
Thank you, David. I want to acknowledge, of course, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples whose territories we're on. I think it's important that we remember that, in particular on a day like today. The Squamish village, Huai Huai, who, for those who might not know, was just down the hill here. I mention that because, of course, just the other day was Indigenous Veterans Day as well, and Indigenous veterans faced much similar realities as Japanese Canadian veterans did. Of course, we had a government here in British Columbia at the time, as mentioned, that while the soldiers were bravely going to fight for liberty, to fight for democracy, to fight for human rights, to fight for all of those things our families want, our governments were doing what they could to try and strip those things from Japanese Canadians, to try and strip those things from Indigenous veterans as well. But they soldiered on, they stood up, they knew what was right, their families knew what was right. Indeed, all of you here today are here because you know what is right. For me, when I think of Remembrance Day, when I think of the veterans that came before us, and indeed those that still stand for us, I always ask myself, am I worthy of their sacrifice? Are we worthy of their sacrifice? And I want to thank the National Association of Japanese Canadians. I want to thank all of the elders here today, the veterans, those family members who would not forget the memories of those who lived before, those who stood for justice, those who kept pushing our provincial government to do what we could to try and make what we could do for redress, to do what we could do to start that conversation again so that we could live with our heads held high, so that we could live feeling that we are worthy of the sacrifice of those who've come before. So thank you to those that I see, so many who I've seen here each and every year for many, many years, who come in person to do the hard work for reconciliation, for redress, for human rights, to stand for peace, to stand for justice, to build that world that these veterans so desperately wanted for us all to have. I thank them, I honor them, I will never forget them. Thank you.
We would now like to begin the placing of wreaths. We were going to ask, I didn't write it down. Yes. Okay, fine, thank you. And for Chick as well? Did you? That's what he'll do. Okay, very good. With that, and when you get my age, sometimes you forget some things, and if you don't write it down, it's not it's not that easy to deal with. Any case, now is a very important traditional part of our ceremonies, and is the placing of wreaths. And I would ask that each of the representatives come forward to collect their wreath. They're all in line in order at the back here, and place it appropriately on the base of the cenotaph as soon as their names are announced. Representing the British Empire Service League, Legion number 9, Miss Megan Becker. Representing S20 and the Nisei Veterans Association, Mike Yamauchi. I might mention that Megan Becker is the great-granddaughter of World War I veteran Masumi Mitsui, who won the military medal in the First World War. And Mike Yamaguchi is grandson of a veteran of the Second World War. I'd ask Assistant Quinn Rinke, representing Member of Parliament Dr. Hedy Fry. Spencer Chandler Herbert, member of the Legislative Assembly for West End Cole Harbour. Following which, would ask the Consul General of Japan, Consul General Kohei Maruyama. Following the Consul General, could I ask Corporal Peter Somerville, representing the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Following which, we would have the Vancouver Police Department, representing the Vancouver Police Department and the Mounted Squad, Inspector James Llewellyn and Inspector Jim Kenny. Representing the National Association of Japanese Canadians, the past president, Laureen Oikawa. Representing the Nikkei National Museum and Cultural Center, Executive Director Kara Goshimon Foster. Representing the City of Vancouver, City Councilor Lisa Dominato. Representing the Vancouver Parks Board, Commissioner Blennon Bastiovansky. Representing the Japanese Community Volunteers Association, or Tonarigumi, Executive Director Keiko Funahashi and Vice Chair Makiko Suzuki. Representing the Vancouver Japanese Language School and Japanese Hall, Executive Director Darius Mays. Representing the BC Jodo Shinshu temples, Buddhist temples, Mr. Ted Akune. Representing the Vancouver Konko faith, Reverend Roderick Hashimoto. From the Seicho no Ie Church, Clarissa Yamamoto. Representing the Greater Vancouver Japanese Canadian Citizens Association, President Kerry Sakim. Representing the Vancouver Japanese United Church, Elisa Greenfield. Representing the Nikkei Seniors Healthcare and Housing Society, Mr. Jay Haraga. Representing the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society, Ms. Suzanne Tabata. Representing Ofukai, Mr. Katsumi Kubo. Representing the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Joy Mooney. Mike Yamauchi, grandson of Shoji, Peter Shoji Yamauchi, a veteran of the Second World War, would like to add a few words.
Hi there. So, of May of 31st this year, my great aunt Chick Tanaka passed away. From as long as I can remember, Chick has been a volunteer here at the Remembrance Day ceremony. Prior to COVID, yearly we would have the reception at either the rowing club or the pavilion, and this was before my time, but I've heard that at the beginning she hand-rolled sushi for everybody, and from as long as I can remember, coming here with my grandfather, Peter Yamauchi, and as well as her, that my family's always been part of the ceremony. And I'd say about 4 years ago, I got a new car, and I also got a new poppy and placed the poppy in my car so that every time that I go in there, I can kind of do a little bit of moment to recognize everything. And so Chick gave me this poppy, and every year we dedicate our poppies at the cenotaph here. So this year, on behalf of the family and just the relationship that I had with my grandfather and Chick, I'd like to dedicate this poppy as a service to everything that she had done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I would now like to ask Kevin Takahide Lee to lead in singing for the first time in a long time, God Save the King. And immediately following that, I would ask Kathy Yamamoto to place her open wreath on the cenotaph, and those who wish to personally pin their lapel poppies to this wreath in memory of our veterans and of their own relatives may do so in an orderly manner. Kevin.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King, send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
Kathy. Thank you. Before I open it up for everyone to place their own pins, if they would like, on that open wreath, I'd like to thank all those who participated in this service today. It's so good to see so many here. It's always it's an honor and a privilege to be able to be a part of this ceremony with each one of you. And I know each one of you have your own stories and your own memories. I've shared some of mine. I know that each one of you also have your own. And I'd like to thank you for coming here and joining with us in this ceremony. Thank you so much. And our best wishes and blessings are with all of you as well as we go through the rest of this year until we gather here again next year. Thank you so much.
here.